Faces are not quite there, but welcome back to the public session. Bienvenue tout le monde à la session publique du conseil d'administration du CUSM. Et malheureusement, on n'est pas en mesure d'avoir une réunion en public comme on le souhaiterait. Nous espérons pouvoir le faire à la prochaine réunion qui est prévue, je pense, au mois de décembre. Alors, au plaisir de vous voir à ce moment-là, en chair et en os. Voilà, c'est tous les commentaires que je voulais faire. Est-ce que je peux avoir l'approbation pour le procès, pour l'ordre du jour, s'il vous plaît? Merci, Dale. Secondé par Patricia. Il n'y a personne qui est contre? D'accord, merci. Alors, c'est pris comme approuvé. Est-ce que je peux avoir une motion pour l'approbation du procès verbal du 20 septembre? Merci, Samira. Et secondé par André. Merci. Y a-t-il des commentaires sur sur le procès verbal? Des commentaires? Non? Alors, ceux qui sont contre, veuillez vous lever le poing ou la main. Non. Alors, j'entends personne, puis je ne vois pas de main. Alors, c'est approuvé. Monsieur le Président du Conseil, y a-t-il des items qui découlent du procès verbal?
Les points qui méritent d'être discutés, je vais les traiter dans mon rapport.
D'accord, merci, merci. Alors, il y a des points de consentement, des résolutions de consentement qui sont inclus dans vos dossiers et qui ont été assujettis à une réflexion, à une recommandation par chaque comité responsable. J'accepterai une motion pour l'approbation de ces résolutions. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Dale. Seconded. Are there any questions regarding the consent items? No items that members would like to deal in full that we should separate? Excellent. Anybody against? I hear silence. I take silence as approval. Thank you so much. The consent items are approved. Monsieur le Président, c'est à votre tour.
Merci, Monsieur le Président du Conseil. Alors, un rapport durant lequel je vais faire le point sur trois situations, puis aussi vous donner, bien entendu, un rapport sur des recommandations qui ont été reçues du comité pour l'action sur l'inclusion, la diversité et l'équité. Alors, je commencerai avec le point sur la COVID-19. Donc, on a vu que les chiffres sont quand même en régression au Québec. On a une diminution, on a eu un petit plateau la semaine passée, mais on a recommencé à descendre. Et puis, les hôpitaux sont clairement moins occupés par les patients de COVID-19 à l'heure actuelle. Donc, il y a encore de la transmission dans les écoles, via les enfants. Mais on se prépare à vacciner les enfants avant les fêtes. Alors, probablement qu'on aura l'autorisation canadienne et américaine pour le vaccin de Pfizer pour les 5 à 11 ans au cours des prochains jours, prochaines semaines. Puis, je sais qu'au Québec, on prépare la campagne de vaccination des enfants débutant au début novembre. En ce qui touche la vaccination des autres segments de la population, il est de plus en plus question qu'on reçoive une troisième dose de façon générale et universelle au Québec au printemps. C'est en discussion présentement, ce n'est pas encore annoncé, mais c'est quelque chose qui pourrait survenir. Les autorités de santé publique et les spécialistes de vaccins discutent de ce point-là. Déjà, il y a une indication de procéder avec les personnes qui vivent en résidence pour personnes âgées, qui sont immunosupprimées. On parle de plus en plus d'une indication pour les personnes de plus de 65 ans, mais peut-être qu'on irait vers une vaccination universelle de la population avec une troisième dose au printemps. Ça soulève bien entendu des enjeux éthiques par rapport à l'équité vaccinale entre les différents pays du monde. Et puis on espère que nos dirigeants tiennent compte dans les décisions qui sont prises. Je veux parler un petit peu, parce que c'est un sujet qui a fait couler beaucoup d'encre, of the compulsory vaccination of healthcare workers. Of course, a deadline had been set by Minister Dubé for October the 15th. On the eve of October the 15th, he announced that he would push back the deadline to November the 15th. I think the minister, from the reports he got from all the institutions in Quebec, came to the conclusion that it would be risky to impose vaccination to workers starting on October the 15th and having many people leaving the service to the population. So it's pushed back now to the 15th of November. At the MUHC, we still have around 900 people who haven't been vaccinated. It's a low percentage. I'll remind everyone that we have plus or minus 15,000 people working in the organization, if I include physicians. And we have 900 people who are not vaccinated. So we're lower than 10%. We're somewhere around 6% or something like that. Still, the leave of absence of some of these workers would have impacts on our service offer in selected sectors, in key sectors, especially for key employees. And we are planning to contact some of these employees to find out whether or not they have made up their mind. If they've made up their mind, they've made up their mind. If not, if they're still hesitant, they're still asking questions, we're going to be trying to answer these questions to see if we can bring some people to get vaccinated in order to disturb as little as possible our services starting on November the 15th. Le troisième point que je veux amener aujourd'hui, c'est la situation à l'hôpital de la Chine. On sait que les hôpitaux communautaires à Montréal sont en difficulté déjà depuis plusieurs mois. Hein. Il y a eu des fermetures dans des endroits comme Santa Cabrini, Maisonneuve-Rosemont, qui est un hôpital pourtant universitaire affilié. Notre-Dame qui a fermé son urgence à de nombreuses reprises pour envoyer les patients au CHUM. Dans l'ouest de la ville aussi, il y a eu des diminutions de services, que ce soit au Lakeshore ou à l'hôpital de la Salle, surtout au Lakeshore. À Verdun également. Donc, cette vague-là qui a commencé tout d'abord dans les hôpitaux périphériques rejoint maintenant les plus grands hôpitaux communautaires à Montréal. Et maintenant, on a un impact à l'hôpital de la Chine. Où jusqu'à maintenant, on a...
Okay.
Can they hear us?
They can't lip read if they don't see you, I think, Dr. Feller. So you're not in the camera scope.
Oh, sorry about that. Is it possible to know if you're still hearing me?
Yep.
OK.
On vous entend très bien, Dr. Feller, mais on ne vous voyait pas du tout.
Ah, ben c'est correct. Je préfère ça que le contraire. OK. So what I was saying is that these difficulties have reached... je suis en français parce qu'on parle de la Chine. Alors, ces difficultés-là ont maintenant atteint l'hôpital de la Chine, où il sera impossible de conserver l'offre actuelle de service à partir du 7 novembre. C'est 7 novembre. Alors, on est en plan de contingence et on regarde, il y a beaucoup de solutions qui ont été regardées depuis 2 mois avec le ministère, avec les équipes sur place, mais il va être difficile pour nous de garder la pleine offre de service à la Chine à partir du début de novembre. On espère que c'est une situation temporaire. On espère que les personnes qui ont quitté le réseau, qui travaillent pour des agences, devront revenir au réseau en grande partie, essentiellement parce que les établissements de Montréal se sont engagés de la Montérégie et des Laurentides, de Laval, de la Naudière. La semaine passée, les PDG ont signé une lettre commune d'engagement, comme quoi ils mettaient fin graduellement à l'utilisation des agences pour les services et qui conservaient les meilleures périodes de travail et les meilleures conditions de travail pour leurs employés plutôt que le personnel des agences. Donc, on pense que ça va peut-être avoir un effet que les employés reviennent dans le réseau et on espère être en mesure de recruter pour la Chine. On a déjà du recrutement spécifique pour la Chine qui se fait, mais c'est une situation qui est difficile. Ça touche surtout les infirmières et ça touche surtout les inhalothérapeutes. Les médecins, dans un premier temps, C'est pas le problème. Par contre, on comprend très bien que des médecins qui travaillent dans une salle d'urgence, si l'urgence est fermée la nuit, par exemple, ils vont faire d'autres choses pour gagner leur vie. Donc, il y a aussi une certaine fragilité de ce côté-là. C'est une situation qui est excessivement préoccupante. Donc, on va continuer à monitorer cette situation-là avec nos collègues du réseau, puis avec le ministère de la Santé, puis les gens qui travaillent chez nous et notre corps médical. Finally, I would like to bring an update on the CA, the preliminary recommendations. So on the 30th of September, on the National Truth and Reconciliation Day, we did publish that the institution had adopted Joyce's principle. And that was one of the recommendations we got from the CA committee as far as their preliminary recommendations are concerned. The first one was appoint an EDI officer, an independent ombudsperson-like authority serving MUHC workforce who would be in a position to maintain neutrality. So discussions are ongoing on this. Mandatory training on implicit bias and cultural safety. Of course, this is taking place all over the province through the Minister of la Santé et des Services Sociaux. But at the same time, we understand that through our mission, especially in providing services to Aboriginal communities and minorities, we understand that we will probably have to go further with our staff at the MUHC. So in terms of educational campaigns, tools and resources for our staff in order to facilitate acquisition of desired attitudes and behaviors, and also consultation and interpretation services, which are already available. We'll have to take a look at the availability and the whether or not this is sufficient. And of course, that it has to become part and parcel of everything we're doing in human resources, recruiting, and at the same time, keeping our people. So I think it's very important. Using closed captioning for all public meetings and events. I'm told that today it's a trial. We're using closed captioning. I don't know whether or not it's working, but it's a trial today. Is it working? Do we know?
It's working.
It's working, I'm told. So that's the first try today. So, and finally, integrate EDI commitment, values, initiatives into the MUHC strategic plan. It is included in the preliminary plan that will be soon presented to the board. So that was my my report for today, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Dr. Feller. Are there any questions from members of the board on any of the aspects of his report? I'll ask a question. Do you expect Dr. Feller to be appointing someone to be the designated officer of the?
Yeah, I think it was a recommendation from the CA committee,
right.
And I know that some other institutions in Quebec have started working on this as well. Of course, it started with le 6 de la Naudière after the event surrounding the death of the tragic death of Madame Echequan. CUSM now is also thinking in the same way. They're probably moving forward, so we're going to be moving forward as well on this.
Okay, great, thank you. Excellent. So, where is my agenda? Right here. So we go to questions. Are there any questions?
From the public?
From the public?
Yes, we do have some questions. We actually have two questions that are related that I will be treating together. And we have 3 more questions. So I'll take them one by one. We also just got a letter and a question an hour or something ago after the deadline that will be circulated to the board members after the meeting. So questions submitted to the board for the public meeting. The first one is from Dr. Emmanuel Colivas on behalf of the RVH Patients Committee. He states, the volunteer body of the MUHC is made up of persons from many ethnic, racial, and cultural roots. At times, they unfortunately experience verbal abuse and social discrimination while carrying out their duties within this institution. Given that the MUHC has a zero tolerance policy for such behavior, the members of the RVH Patients Committee would like to know what safe and supportive procedures are in place for the victims of abuse and discrimination to follow in order that their concerns might be heard. To whom should these concerns be addressed, and what resources have been put in place that can effectively address and resolve these concerns with compassion and understanding? Question 2 is related. It comes from an anonymous source. Some of the most dedicated MUHC volunteers are patients who have mobility and sensory challenges, yet they are subjected to discrimination, harassment, and bullying. So I understand from recent discussions with the Central Users Committee that these two questions are related to elements of dynamics within our Central Users Committee. So the question is, what measures does the MUHC have in place to deal with those who bully, harass, discriminate, and protect vulnerable and hardworking volunteers with mobility and sensory challenges? So I'd like to thank you, Monsieur Colivas, and also the committee member who preferred to remain anonymous for the questions. Of course, we recognize the importance of a healthy healthcare environment. Respect and civility among members of the MUHC community is one of our values, and it creates the favorable conditions for collaboration. An environment free of psychological harassment, discriminatory harassment, sexual harassment, and violence also contributes to making the MUHC an inclusive organization. The respect and civility policy outlines strategies in place to prevent and stop all forms of harassment and violence. This includes preventive awareness, information, and training activities, as well as assessing risk factors and correcting situations caused by disrespect, incivility, disagreement, harassment, and violence. All members of the MUHC community, and that includes members of the Central Users Committee and of all the local Users Committee, are required to comply with this policy by conducting themselves with respect and civility and without harassment and violence with others whom they will encounter at the MUHC. The MUHC encourages members of its community who believe they are being subjected to behaviors that contravene this policy to report to the authorities designated in the procedure Respect and Civility Procedure HR 346, which are distinct depending on the status of the complainant and the respondent within the MUHC community. A MUHC volunteer who wishes to file a complaint in relation to a conduct that contravenes MUHC policy, respect and civility, must do so to the MUHC manager who supervises their work as a volunteer. The manager in question can obtain advice and support from Human Resources, Communication and Affairs Directorate to manage this situation. The next question is also, I think, related to the same type of situation. It comes from Mme. Lisa Rosati, who used to be the CUC chair and secretary, and she's a member of the RVH Patients Committee. The MUHC Users Committee, also known as the Central Users Committee, is the legally mandated and annually funded patient advocacy committed by the Ministry for our institution, and to which it is accountable to the MUHC Board of Directors. Our committee objective has always strived to reflect a commitment to excellence in our regular and timely monitoring of the quality of care, services, and living conditions for MUHC patients in collaboration with administration and staff. However, as a volunteer member involved in the Users Committee in various capacities and on the executive since its inception in 2002, I am demoralized and very concerned with the frustrating impasse and persistent dysfunction of the committee. I see with the blatant disregard for bylaws, the lack of transparency and disclosure of information, the regular exclusion of our board representative, and the considerable amount of time wasted in conflict spent at monthly meetings which then prevents elected members from moving forward in fulfilling their important advocacy mandate and addressing vital issues that impact patients. Most disturbing is the blatant violation of the MUHC respect and civility policy by the authoritative CUC leadership, as evidenced by the numerous documented complaints sent to the administration of members' personal experiences of toxic behavior, bullying, and intimidation. Questions. How are such individuals allowed to continue in their role and not held to account for their action? Okay, of course, that's a very serious question. And we knew that there were tensions within the different groups of volunteers active in our users committee. I did myself have a meeting with the executive of the CUC in the presence of their representative to the board. I also had discussions with many people who sent me letters. And of course, this situation is unacceptable and cannot continue. It's not good for the recruitment and retention of hardworking volunteers, patient advocates, who are often the backbone of a successful institution. In the best interest of patients and a functional MUHC users committee, I kindly request once again the wisdom and direction of both the executive of the CUC and its members, and also our board of directors for assistance in resolving this dilemma. Thank you. So that's the question from Madame Rossetti. So thank you, Madame Rossetti, for your questions. And one thing above all, a users committee that can fulfill its mandate effectively. As I have just discussed the respect and civility policy, allow me to focus on the apparent impasse amongst a number of its members and the resulting impact on the committee's role. The law respecting health services and social service is relatively silent as to the roles and responsibilities of the board of directors and management regarding the CUC. Having said that, the terms of reference relating to users committees and residents committees offer certain avenues of reflection. One, even though the Central Users Committee has significant latitude due to its functional autonomy, it is accountable for its actions to the users it represents. Further, being a committee of the institution, it is accountable to the board of directors. Consequently, its autonomy, although very large, is not absolute. In the event of a dispute within the committee, the president and executive director may intervene by virtue of the powers and responsibilities of his office in order to bring the parties concerned to examine the dispute between them and try to find common ground for an agreement to promote the proper functioning of the committee. That's what we did about a month and a half ago. This intervention might involve monitoring, but not interfering of the activities related to the functions entrusted to these committees by the law respecting health services and social services. As of now, we haven't been monitoring the progress on the story. I really spoke to the members of the executive of the CUC, to other volunteers, saying that we had to find a common ground for the sake of our patients and their families. And as you are likely aware, Mrs. Rosazzi, the concerns you raised were brought to my attention during the summer. I had a meeting with the executive on August 27, the users committee's board rep and other members of the committee. I followed up with a letter on September 1st, wherein I expressed my sincere hope that all parties would find a way to work together in a respectful and civil manner by using a common purpose as a bridge. Clearly, things are not turning themselves around at the present moment. So at this point, we might have to consider other avenues. Without interfering with the functioning of the committee, I want to make this point extremely clear. So one avenue to consider, we might discuss it with you, would be to entrust an external investigation mandate to a person who is highly experienced in conflict management and who is sensitive to the mandate of a users committee. That would be a path that we could maybe choose to follow. Depending on the recommendations of this person, an offer of mediation could also follow. I will need to reflect on this and discuss it with you because, like you, I want to see the Central Users Committee to comprise hardworking patient advocates and volunteers who have the best interests of patients at heart and who can do so and can exercise their power without harassment, without bullying, without any of the things that have been described in the letters that I did get. So I hope this answers the question, and we'll have to have an ongoing discussion on this topic with the CUC. Question number 4, completely different topic. It is from Madame Ina Doyle. Question: my understanding is that a physician has to pass a French exam to practice in Quebec. Is it true that under Bill 96, a doctor can be investigated on the basis of an anonymous complaint that his or her French is not good enough? Could the doctor then lose their right to practice? The question number, thank you, Mrs. Doyle, for this very important question. Actually, physicians have had to pass a French exam to practice in Quebec since the 70s, so it's nothing new. What would be new in the project that is Bill 96 would be that they would have to maintain competency in French throughout their career. So I think we'll have to wait. It's a bill. It still has to go through the National Assembly to see the final result of what will become the law, becoming from not being a bill anymore, but becoming a law. So we'll have to take a look. At the same time, I think for the College of Physicians, it is already expected that people who practice medicine in Quebec should have a working knowledge of French. That is already expected by the College of Physicians. So then we have one more question by Dr. Judy Fish. She's one of our psychologists, PhD. I am concerned that by what I have read and heard about the impact of Bill 96 on access to healthcare in English. Premier Legault recently said that service will be restricted to historic Anglos, which he defines as someone eligible to be educated in English. Question: does that mean that someone who moves here from Jamaica or Australia will receive care in English? A long discussion on this subject took place during the plenary session of the board a bit earlier today. Thank you, Dr. Fish, for your question. As I just stated, it is too early to draw a conclusion on this draft bill. We'll see what the final law will look like. What is the most important thing, I think, is to remember that the MUHC has a long history of providing care and services, not only in French and English, but also in over 40 languages. And we hope that we'll be able to keep on doing that and that this will not change. But we'll have to see the final version of the law that will be adopted. I see that the closed captioning is working and quite well. Thank you very much. These were the questions for today. There was also a letter that just came in regarding the status of the situation at Lachine that will be distributed to the board members after the meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Feller. I think that with those questions, we have completed our public meeting of the board. And so we will evolve to the annual public meeting. Do we stay on the same? We will rejoin with a new Zoom address in a few moments. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us.